just use the glass polish solution under the sink to wash the area affected, and it should clear up in the near future. And what is up guys, Philippe at Alpha Mode YouTube, and today I want to talk with you guys about one of the things I wish someone had taken the time to explain to me before I started going around with plans for my first steroid cycle as a young man. Now keep in mind that this is probably not what most men would think would be the number one advice to give someone who are thinking about doing steroid. But it's the only thing to this day and age, at almost 15 years since I did my first 250 mg of testosterone cycle, that I wish that I would thought about more when I was younger and was about to do my first steroid cycle. So this is one of the things that have become a permanent side effect for me after doing steroids for so many years. I remember my main concern when I did my first cycle was mostly how much would it cost me and how big would my arms grow for that single vial of liquid gold. First off, I was more or less broke most of the time and I barely had enough money for the roids, and let alone I have money to care about which drugs I got or how well they would work or anything like that in general. Now keep in mind, I know that is dumb as fuck, but we all been too hasty at some point in our life, and I really thought that, well, getting those really huge biceps and big guns would be the happiest day of my life. So I do clearly remember what kind of advice I got from the guy who helped me with all this stuff when I was younger, and of course that's the same guy who was also supplying the drugs that I needed. Although he was a pretty solid dude, I liked him, we were good friends, nothing bad there, anything. I'm pretty sure that he had no ill intentions towards the advice he gave me. Even though that his first advice was, remember to take the ACG after your cycle or you will lose all your gains more or less because your natural testosterone wouldn't recover. And well, first of all, it is a bad idea. I know that today, without some blood work, you don't know what you're working with. So just taking drugs is not a good idea to prevent damage from other drugs. That's just a spiral of drug abuse that goes on and on forever. Not a good idea. Second advice, I had to eat every 3 hours or the steroid would be wasted. I don't know where it came from, but I think it was a good and solid advice to try and help me eat more. The only problem is I actually had a friend at that time who took that very literally, and he actually ended up gaining, I think about 50 kilos or something on his first steroid cycle, and that was not muscle. He went to become fat, he never got thin again, like he gained so much fat from that advice. So wasn't a solid advice for me, not for him either, but it was a good advice. Like, I don't think he had no ill intentions with that. 3, I was not allowed, more or less, to go out and drink, which I think is pretty good and common advice for anyone trying to get in shape, especially bodybuilding shape, but it's not an advice for anyone doing roids. 4, if I break out from acne, I can just use the glass polish solution under the sink to wash the area affected, and it should clear up in the near future. And well, I think that was more or less it. Those were the things I had to look out for on my new steroid adventure. So now at this point, it's been almost 15 years since I started my first steroid cycle, and well man, have I gotten smarter since. Keep in mind, I do not neglect some of the severe and adverse issues that can arise from the abuse of steroids, anabolics, anything, whatever you call them. And I really try and encourage people to remember that they only have one set of organs, they have one body, one mind, and one life. Hence, they should approach this kind of interest with a bit of caution. But as I said, personally, I haven't seen any side effects. The only thing that could nag me is the thought that I might have done some damage to my body that I don't know about, or that I have assumed was less at the given time that it actually is. But that is a part of the game when you play doctor at home alone with yourself as a lab rat. So just be cautious, guys. But all that aside, the only thing that really bothers me to this day and age is this. The only thing I really regret when I did steroids for bodybuilding is mostly that no one ever had explained to me that, Well, more or less 99% of all people that use steroids are going to get bald or going bald. Going bald in your 30s suck almost as much as in your 20s or any other age, of course, to some extent. Because of course, if you're 50 and you're going bald, it's not as bad as if you're 30 or in your 20s. But it's still such a big blow to the head when you have thinning hair and you see another guy at your age with just a lion's mane compressed into that dense patch of hair on his head, while you still have this very thin flippy flappy thing going on there, and you just see what the difference is. So I was doing steroids for the next 5 to 8 years. I mostly used what gave the most bang for the buck of steroids, meaning that I mostly did smaller doses of tren, since tren was about 20% more expensive than testosterone for me, but the anabolic ratio is 5 times the amount of testosterone, meaning that on paper tren is about 500% stronger than testosterone for only the low increase of price of 20% in my case. So I basically went from around 200 mg of tren a week combined with about 100 milligrams of testosterone a week to something around 200 plus testosterone when I was off, since that was the old school way of doing steroids. More or less you went on and then you could go off on a low dose of test and then you went back on at some point again. Little did I know that it was slowly killing most of my chances for leaving my 20s with any kind of hair on my scalp. Of course, as I gain size, my cycle gains size as well, which by the way is some of the worst and dumbest advice to give or get, but I didn't know better at the point. So I started to play around with dosages to see, well, if more gear equals more gains. Not only did I probably wreck my hairline completely at that point, I also wasted a ton of money on gear since I barely didn't know how to train properly or at least eat healthy. So most of the gear I took back in the days probably could have been way less harsh on my system, cheaper and also healthier for my hairline and my intestines and everything else. You see, if I had known what I know today, I would probably just have stayed on 250 mg of testosterone, since for most guys that is actually plenty to give a really above average fitness prospect. Not only would 250 mg be way better for my wallet, health and hairline, but if I also known about steroids and hair loss before I picked my cycles and determined for how long I would stay on the select juice that I had decided to go on, I would probably have been way better off. Not only would I have reduced the damage from the anabolics, but I would also have known more about testosterone and stuff like dihydrotestosterone from the 5-alpha reductase enzyme together with hair loss. And with that kind of base, I could have gotten something as basic as finasteride and combined it with IU-58841 and probably minimize most of the hair loss that would later become a major problem for me personally in my life. So my number one advice is this, my fellow men or women. Keep in mind that you can always get rid of the muscle, but some of the effects are permanent on your looks, and you are definitely never the exception of the rule. So if you want to take steroids, well, use your brain, take good care of your skin, be careful about stretch marks and take good care of your health. But the thing I usually say to young men thinking about doing steroids is, would you be okay if you might be going bald in the next 5 to 10 years? Because that is a solid possibility for you to deal with in the near future if you go down this path. You don't even have to submerge you into the whole trestless community and learn about something like CB0301 or Pyrilutamide from Kintor and so on. No, the very least thing you could do if you want to try and keep your hair, well, try and start with low TRT dosages of testosterone and combine it with the FDA-approved drug finasteride. Try Dutasteride if you want to go a little harder on the DHT, and if you want to mess around with higher dosages, take something else than testosterone, add something like RU5841 on top of your scalp to protect from all the androgenic response you might get. You see guys, going bald isn't exactly what you always experience that it might be, especially because you always think about bald version of you in the long distant future somewhere out there. But the funny thing is that balding me at an older age is still the same me as when I was 20. It was just a problem for tomorrow me and not today me. The problem is today me is the one who got all these problems. So I would encourage everybody out there to just remind yourself you're born with something like 100,000 follicles on your hair. Every time you do a cycle, you permanently change your hairline, you reduce your count of follicles. Not only that, you get stretch marks, you get facial features that change. I've seen girls that I actually know that has like a small beard, like the fuzzy beard, they have to actually shave at this point because they used to do steroids. I know a girl who had a baby where they actually had issues with the birth of the baby because she used to do a shit ton of anabolics when she was younger. So just keep in mind, these things are permanent. It is going to leave some kind of mark or scar, trace, whatever we'll call it, and just determine for yourself, is there anything I can do to prevent this shit? Me personally, I don't care a lot about children. I don't want any children personally. So I'm good if my testes just got wrecked and I couldn't get children. That's not a concern for me. But my hairline, that's something entirely different else. And if I knew how it had worked back then, I would definitely have taken more steps to reassure myself that I might not end up in that situation I went up ending in when I was around 28 years old and I figured out that I was actually going bald for sure. So guys, that is my number one advice. Take care of your hair. If you're like me, probably if you're on my channel, you think about your hair, you think about steroids, working out, whatever it is. Be cautious guys, because what I know now is that the massive size and muscles and fitness isn't going to make me happy on a long-term scale. But the problem is that I still have to deal with all the side effects. I lost my hair and then I had to go down in dosages anyway and I lost the size. So I did not end up gaining a lot of things from all those cycles, except that I got educated a lot about what are really good priorities in life and how to approach something like this another time if that should arise. Guys, that is all I have for you today. I hope I see you in the next video. Cheers.